Sometime in late 1980, Colonel Paul E. Vallely, the commander of the 7th Psychological Operations Group, United States Army Reserve, Presidio of San Francisco, California, co-authored a discussion paper which was received wide and controversial attention within the U.S. military, particularly within Special Operations community. The paper was titled From PSYOP to Mind War, The Psychology of Victory, and it presented a Machiavellian scheme for waging perpetual psychological warfare against friend and enemy populations alike, and even against the American people. The Mind War paper was provoked by an article by Lieutenant Colonel John Alexander, which appeared in the 1980 edition of Military Review, advocating the introduction of ESP, extrasensory perception, telepathic behavior modification, parapsychology, psychokinesis, mind over matter, remote viewing, out-of-body experiences, and other New Age and occult practices into U.S. military intelligence. Alexander's paper was titled The New Mental Battlefield, Beam Me Up, Spock. General Mike Aquino wrote From PSYOP to Mind War with Colonel Paul E. Vallely, The Psychology of Victory. Aquino's thesis stated that enemy populations could be subdued by inflicting a state of psychological terror and feelings of imminent destruction. Shock and awe, in other words. He discusses the use of psychotronic weapons or electronic weapons that influence the mind. Capitulation could be induced without firing a shot by using signals piggybacked on broadcasts of radio, TV, microwave communications to influence through subliminal suggestion, holograms, voice-to-skull and silent sound technologies to manipulate the feelings and thoughts of the target population. During the 1960s and 70s, he was prominent in the Church of Satan and a close friend of Anton LaVey until he started his own Church of Set. Anton LaVey was the originator of the Church of Satan. A police intelligence report dated July 1, 1980 reads, quote, "The Church of Set is a group of hundreds of members that operates on a national level. Aquino is the official head of the organization and rules through a council of 9, who are in fact his lieutenants." End quote. At least 2 members of the Council of 9 at that time were members of Army intelligence. In the late 1980s, Aquino was accused by the San Francisco Police Department of being involved in a satanic child molestation ring centered on the Presidio military base where Aquino was stationed at the time. Probable victims were numbered at 68, many of whom had contracted venereal disease. 22 families filed $66 million in claims against the Army, claiming that criminal charges against Aquino were dropped due to pressure from the Army. Aquino reportedly rented the German castle where the Nazi SS was formed and reenacted the secret ceremony among fellow spooks decked out in full Nazi regalia. General Aquino is now one of the highest-ranking officers in the NSA. The Strategic Studies Institute of the U.S. Army War College produced a paper in 1994 entitled The Revolution in Military Affairs and Conflict Short of War. A revolution in military affairs, RMA, is mentioned that will not only change the nature of warfare but also alter the global geopolitical balance of power. An example of a revolution in military affairs is the invention of gunpowder or atomic weapons, in short, an innovation that turns the world upside down. The authors of this paper, Metz and Kiewit, claim behavior modification is a key component of peace enforcement, and modification will be directed at the American people. This will take place, the authors state, through directed energy systems, whose primary advantage is deniability. They are straightforward about the unlimited possibilities inherent in perception molding through the use of psychotechnologies. Anyone who objects to this kind of mind warping will be identified using comprehensive interagency integrated databases, unquote, then categorized into, quote, computerized personality simulations. which will be used to develop, tailor, and focus psychological campaigns for each, unquote. New World Vistas, a book published in 1996 by the U.S. Air Force Advisory Board, which discusses biological process control. We will have achieved a clear understanding of how the human brain works, how it really controls the various functions of the body, and how it can be manipulated both negatively and positively. One can envision the development of electromagnetic energy sources, the output of which can be pulsed, shaped, and focused, that can couple with the human body in a fashion that will allow one to prevent voluntary muscular movements, control emotions and thus actions, produce sleep, transmit suggestions, interfere with both short-term and long-term memory, produce an experience set, and delete an experience set. It would also appear possible to create high-fidelity speech in the human body, raising the possibility of covert suggestion and psychological direction. When a high-power microwave pulse in the gigahertz range strikes the human body, a very small temperature perturbation occurs. This is associated with a sudden expansion of the slightly heated tissue. This expansion is fast enough to produce an acoustic wave. If a pulse stream is used, it should be possible to create an internal acoustic field in the 5 to 15 kilohertz range, which is audible. Thus it may be able to talk to selected adversaries in a fashion that will be most disturbing to them, unquote. It also discussed in the creation and broadcasting of alternate realities. The concept of imprinting an experience set is highly speculative, but nonetheless highly exciting. Ultra-short pulse scattering through the human brain can result in reflected signals that can be used to construct a reliable estimate of the degree of central nervous system arousal. The concept behind the remote EEG is to scatter off of action potentials or ensembles of action potentials in major central nervous system tracts. Assuming we will understand how our skills are imprinted and recalled, it might be possible to take this concept one step further and duplicate the experience set in another individual, unquote. A 1996 military paper entitled Information Operations, a New Warfighting Capability, written for the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, designed to identify what is required for the U.S. to remain, quote, the dominant air and space force in the future. The paper asserts that, quote, for continued success as a superpower, the key is information dominance. Part of this dominance will be the development of a Space Satellite Linked Information Integration Center, or IIC, which will act as a central information processing and control center. The IIC will monitor people who have been implanted with, quote, microscopic brain chip. The brain chip performs two functions. First, it links the individual to the IIC, creating a seamless interface between the user and the information resources, in-time collection data, and archival databases. In essence, the chip relays the processed information from the IIC to the user. Second, the chip creates a computer-generated mental visualization. Quote, implanting things in people raises ethical and public relations issues, unquote. In the future, the civilian population will likely accept an implanted microscopic microchip that allows military members to defend vital national interests, unquote. The paper goes on to note that the California Institute of Technology has developed an energy-efficient computer chip which emulates the analog thinking of the human brain. When this capability is fully mature, this chip could provide the baseline for a brain implant hooked to all the sensory segments of the brain, not just the eyes.